You know, you've led the country before. You know what leadership is. You know how to bring together a fractured community. What do the events of the last 12 months say to you about how this tragedy has played out in Australia? What does it say about us? What does it say about our country?
Well, Peter, basically, what it says to me is that there are too many Australians who can't decide what side they're on, as between an apocalyptic terrorist death cult and a liberal democracy. And what that says to me is that we've had inadequate immigration policies and integration policies, we've had inadequate educational systems, and we've had suboptimal leadership, because if our immigration system was running right, we would be stressing that people have to join Team Australia, and that means embracing Australian values. If our education systems were running right, we wouldn't be propagating this idea of Israel as some kind of a colonial exploiter. And if our leadership was good, it would actually be saying to the Australian public, we know whose side we're on, but instead of strong leadership, I think what we've had for much of the last 12 months is followership, particularly from some of our senior leaders who are more worried about Islamists in their electorates than they are about Australia's national interest.
But there is a right and a wrong, Tony Abbott. We shouldn't be backward in saying that there is a right and a wrong.
Completely correct. And this is about as close as things get in this complicated world to good versus evil. You have got an apocalyptic death cult which slaughtered 1,200 people, brutalised 200 hostages, which is bent on the extirpation not just of Israel, but ultimately on death to all infidels. That's on the one hand. And on the other hand, you've got a liberal democracy under the rule of law where everyone, regardless of his or her religion, has rights. This is not a choice that should be difficult for people. And yet, for too many Australians right now, it does seem difficult. And some, alas, are actually on the wrong side. Now, I think we need to deal much more firmly with these anti-Semitic protests. And I also think that the leadership has to speak out much more strongly on exactly where our interests and our values lie in this particular matter.
Yeah, it's not just our government here of the left that's been bought and sold, and I heard your reference there to Mike Kelly of the Labor right, for where Labor was once very strong friends of Israel. That's not the Labor Party we know now, but we see this happening out in the UK. We see it happening also to some degree in the United States. This says a lot about the wider world as much as it says about our values in Australia or the response of Israel. Where do we go to from here?
Well, Peter, you're right. I think Israel is, to use a phrase that I think the Board of Deputies used today, Israel is at the pointy end of a civilisational struggle. And again, I think all of us, from the US and the UK leadership down, have got to understand just what is at stake here. But this is where I agree with your editorial, Peter. Whatever you think of Bibi Netanyahu, he is being a Churchill at this time, not a Chamberlain, and we need more Churchills and fewer Chamberlains. And so I think that Bibi, I hope he gives President Biden and Prime Minister Starmer a polite hearing, but he then consults what is in Israel's best interests and acts accordingly, because the world needs Israel to win. And frankly, what's in the best interests of Israel right now is in the best interests of all of us.
Tony Abbott, thank you. I know you must go into the embassy now for that service, but I appreciate your time.